Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Steve Kenyon Podcast. I'm Steve Kenyon, and we are so glad that you have joined us. Coming up today, we'll talk to National Finals Rodeo Team Roping Qualifier, and a guy who almost won the all-around title last year, Coleman Proctor, will join us. We'll get Coleman's thoughts on 2025 and his hopes to maybe qualify for two different finals, both the National Finals Rodeo and the National Finals Steer Roping. That is coming up. And, of course, as always, we say thank you to the people that bring you our programs and everything that we do on social media. Please like and subscribe to our 8 Seconds Media Facebook page, to our Instagram and Snapchat, and all of the other social media sites we have. Thanks to Rodeo Life magazine since 1961. Thanks to M2 Ranch Jerky. You can buy them now on Amazon. M2 Ranch Jerky, m2-ranch.com. To Equinity, it's all about the horse, teamequinity.com. The Justin Boot Company, to the Grandview at Las Vegas. To Wrangler, the official Western Wear Pro Rodeo. Long live Cowboys. To Resistol, proud sponsors of the Resistol Rookie of the Year Award. The Gooding Pro Rodeo in Gooding, Idaho. To our friends at Next Gen Rodeo, and of course the Cowboy Channel. This week you can follow the rodeos in Fort Worth, San Antonio, and Rapid City, South Dakota, all on the Cowboy Channel. Our featured interview of the week is sponsored by Classic Equine. Play to win. We are Classic Equine. And by ClassicRopes. Success is in your hand. Stay with us. In just a moment, we'll talk to Coleman Proctor.
Hey y'all, this is Cody Johnson. When I was starting out in music, most every radio station and venue I went to told me no. At that point, you got two options: tuck tail and quit, or buckle down and fight. Well, I'm a fighter, not a quitter. And that's why I wear Wrangler jeans and shirts. Their toughness and style are legendary. They're an iconic symbol of the West, and there's no quit in them either. Life's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And if I'm gonna enjoy the ride, I'm riding in Wrangler. Wrangler, long live Cowboys.
Step into the legendary style of the King of Country with the George Strait collection from Justin Boots. Fit for a king, these boots boast an advanced cushioning system and are crafted with the finest exotic leathers, embodying Georgia's iconic comfort and stage-worthy presence.
Make sure to check out the George Strait collection from Justin Boots, standard of the West since 1879.
Find yours today at justinboots.com.
Time for today's featured interview, brought to you by Classic Equine. Play to win. We are Classic Equine. And by Classic Rope. Success is in your hands. Coleman Proctor, it's a pleasure to have a chance to visit with you. Welcome to the Steve Kenyon Podcast. Thank you for your time, my friend. It's always such a pleasure to visit with you.
Man, I really appreciate you having me on, Steve.
Well,
I really appreciate all you're doing. I tell you, you've been one of the forefronts of really getting all the contestants out in front of the crowd, and we really appreciate all your hard work.
Well, I've been trying. It's been I'll tell you what, Coleman, I don't brag very often, but ever since we started doing radio back in 2008, I think is when I started doing the NFR radio. I actually started doing it in 2006 and took it over in 2008. This has been one of the most fun parts of everything I get to do, is not just getting to know so many people like you, but getting to tell your stories. And you do the same thing with your podcast. This sport is full of great stories and great storytellers, I think, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think when we're done rodeoing, and what the stories that stick out the most, obviously, you remember all your big wins and you remember your big losses, but really it's the times you broke down the side of the road and you got to meet, new people from a different town. I think the Western industry brings out the best that America has to offer. And those are the stories that I like hearing about and telling, and just all the great interactions you have across the Western Seaboard. You know what I mean? Everywhere we go, it feels like you're meeting great people. And the contestants that have so many other talents outside of what you get to see in the arena. And, like you said, there's a lot of great storytellers. And that's what my podcast, that's what it's all about, is getting to know behind the scenes, what's going on every day. What got you to this point? And I think that's one thing you did was such a great job. You were the first person that really ever had rodeos like on the radio. I remember being in the truck leaving. I wasn't in the short round at Pendleton, but listening to it, on Sirius XM for the first time ever. I mean, those are huge strides and you've been at the forefront of all that. So yeah, I think you're doing a great job getting to tell everybody's behind the scenes.
Well, thank you, Coleman. I appreciate that. So you said something, all the hidden talents that contestants have that nobody knows about. I'll bet you've been around a few parking lots on a Thursday night before you had to pull off to go to the next slack on Friday morning or something, somebody's brought out a guitar or somebody started telling stories or reciting poetry, or you can name
Trevor,
names if you want to. I don't care. But I know Jacobs Crowley, for example, he'll bring out a guitar every once in a while.
well, Trevor knows, man. The first time I ever hung out at Caldwell with him, and in fact, that's where he's the first one that ever told me that there was such a thing as the Big Four,
Huh.
And he got his guitar and starts just picking and getting, and I'm like, how is this guy not on American Idol or something? You know what I mean? He's out here just bulldogging steers and being one of the best in the business. And I'm like, well, I kind of feel like maybe you're missing the boat with this whole guitar thing, man. If I looked like you and could pick the guitar like you and sounded like you, I mean, I would be trying that out a little bit.
Yeah, no kidding. Coleman Proctor's joining us. How's 2025 been?
Oh, we're just getting started. And I think a guy gets a lot of pressure put on in the winter. I told my guy the other day, I said, man, I don't know if Odessa is the right starting point for me. I just came off vacation. I'm not as sharp as I want to be. And it's amazing. Jake Long and I were talking about this the other day, like how you go from, you get ready the entire month of November for the national finals. You feel as sharp as you've ever felt. And you're so ready. And then literally just not even 3 weeks later, you can feel as dull as you've ever felt. You know what I mean? I was on a beach for a week there between Christmas and New Year's and just not concerned about roping at all. And so then I go to Odessa and, I ding the barrier to win the first round by a second. So that's a little frustrating. You're like, I'm just not ready. And my partner and I were talking about this just the other day. You can put too much pressure on the winter. I think last year we had a pretty mediocre winter and got to Reno. We had 30,001. And by the end of July, we've got 100,001. So rodeo is a full year battle, and it hasn't quite gotten taken off like we want it to yet, but we've only been to 3 or 4 places. So, each steer is worth a lot of money, but you can't put too much pressure on it. You don't have to be winning in the winter in order to have a chance to win a gold buckle. I think we proved that last year.
How do you knock the rust off? How do you get, you went through probably as much, tell me if you agree with what I'm about to say, Coleman. You went through as much publicity as you've ever gone through at this year's NFR, because you were not only in the race to be a world champion in the team roping and the heading, but you were also in a race to be a world champion in the all-around. Did you feel like how do you knock the rust off from all of that?
Well, I had Tyler trying to buzz in there. He's wanting to ride a tripping horse at the steer at the timed event, and so I apologize. But I think where you were going with your question was how we knocked the rust off and all the publicity from the finals. Well, one thing, I've always been very comfortable with the publicity side of it. I think it's nice to get myself a little distraction, if you will, sometimes. And then, honestly, man, I'm a grinder. I like getting in that practice pen. I like getting after it. And that I get my most confidence from when my preparation is really well. So when I'm prepared, that's when I feel like I'm absolutely ready. And, mentally, I've been in a great place every time we've showed up at these rodeos. So I think that's really helped. Getting back in the practice pen, it helps my mentality. It helps my focus and being able to slow things down. As a header, you're the one that decides when you're snapping the ball. So, that being able to nod when everything's real good and quiet and everything is slowed down to you, that's usually when I'm in the spot to really have a lot of success.
Break down your time. And the reason I ask this is you're now a father. You and I are recording this. Full disclosure, Coleman just got done taking the kids to school. He got off of what he calls dad duty.
Absolutely.
You teach schools. You have a lot of sponsors that I want to talk to you about in a minute that you are committed to, that you work very hard for, and you're one of the elite team ropers in the country. So how do you manage all of that, Coleman? Do you sit down and actually sketch out every day? Do you sketch out every week? How do you take care of all that?
It is. I have gotten to be more of a planner. I told my wife the other day, like all through my 20s, I don't think I planned anything.
Yeah.
And
I'm in my 60s. I still don't. Don't worry about it.
And in school, man, I always did best. Like I was a procrastinator, but I could write the best essay whenever I started the night before. And I don't know why. It just always, that's how it was. And that's how it lined out. And, but now I've gotten to where I'm older and I am a planner. And I just know that when I am home, I want to spend as much time like being dad as I can.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, when summer rolls around, I've got to go and the girls have to be here and, at home. So I don't get to take them with me as much as I want. So that's really important to me. And so I prioritize that. And so anytime I get to be home, I really enjoy that time in the morning with them. And I'm great at doing hair, and I never thought that'd be something that I would be good at. Right? Like, I mean, you grow up braiding your horse's mane and tail. You don't realize that prepares you for fatherhood. But that's kind of my drill in the morning. Get up and get the girls going. We've got to do hair. Like today, since it's on a Tuesday, we got to go by the coffee shop or by the diner, or I guess since it's a Wednesday. I don't even know what day of the week it is.
It's Wednesday. It's okay.
Well, we get because it's every other day. Some days we got to do the donut shop. Some days we get to go to the diner. And, I remember being a kid and those experiences with my dad, like going to the diner, learning how to leave a tip, learning how to socialize and visit with people in public. That was a big thing for me. So that's something I've been wanting to do with the girls. And so today we do the diner, and then we got to stay on schedule because I'm big about, I tell my kids all the time, like nobody that's successful, they're rarely late, like they prioritize where they're supposed to be. They take a lot of value in their time. And whenever you're late, you're taking away from somebody else's time. And time is an invaluable resource. Like we don't know how much we have of it. And so when somebody's willing to give you that's just disrespectful, quite frankly. So, I know I grew up most of my life being late. And so that's something I'm trying to instill in my kids is to have a lot of, put a lot of weight on being on time. So that means that my dad has to get them to school on time right now. Like at 8:30, they lock the door and then we have to walk in. And I'm going to tell you right now, my girls are not at sticking to the story, right? Like you walk in and you're just like, hey, we're just going to tell them we had some stuff pop up at the ranch this morning. And then let me do the talking. Walk in, first thing they're going to do is just, Dad was late. And throw me right under the bus. So, it is fun. But, it is something every day, I wake up. We got a lot of stuff going on here at the ranch. We run a cow-calf operation. And then, I try to catch up with my lessons when I'm home. What's hard about the winter is all our schedules dependent on if you're doing good at the rodeos. Well, that takes away another week. Yeah. If you're doing bad at the rodeos, now we all of a sudden have an open week. And so this was the only week that I had scheduled that I was actually going to be home and able to catch up on all this stuff. So I started scheduling some schools and some other stuff that I had to get caught up on. Because then hopefully, the rest of the month of February, we're busy every week doing good at San Antonio. Got to go back, Tucson rolls around, then it goes into the timed event. Of course, got a lot of steer roping to be doing. But so you can get lost in the middle of all of it. And I think the most important thing is to remember what allows you to have this opportunity is what you do with your head rope. So that takes the precedent every day. That is the number one thing we got to take care of. I work at the roping every day, even if it's just getting to stay at the house and rope the dummies and drill my horses and be prepared mentally that way. That's kind of that I stay focused the most on that and then try to fit everything else in where I can. I use my opportunity to drop my girls off to be able to perform under pressure. Because if you have not dropped kids off at an elementary school with a bunch of other parents, you're probably late. I mean, there's a lot of pressure in that. You're going to get honked at a few times. You're gonna, I'm bad. I want to open the doors for my girls, right? Like I'm going to stop. I'm going to get out. I'm going to open the door for each one of them. Because one day they're going to be dating, right? And I want them to understand that the man's supposed to get out and open the door for you.
Yeah.
And that's what we start learning now. Like we're going to start grooving that in right now. There's no just pulling in there, jump out. Although I told my wife, I want to get a minivan one day with the buttons because I did see the most baller move ever. This lady come pulling in with her van, hardly slows it down and just hits the button. Doors are sliding. Kids are just funneling out. Hits the doors again as they cross in front of her and then out the door. And I'm like, man, that was impressive. But no, so it's a lot of pressure dropping them off at school. And I use that to really prepare for, if I can handle the pressure of Roosevelt Elementary drop off, then backing in there running one to win the Americans shouldn't be that much different.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how could it be different? I never went to a school that was that well organized where everybody pulled in, you rolled in, there was like you had 15 seconds to get your kids out of the van and then you were out of the parking lot and the next person went. I never went to a school that was that well organized. So
I didn't either. And so that was very new when I started doing that. And there's certain places you drop them off. There's certain places you pick them up. There's certain ways you can enter the line. There's certain ways you can't. I mean, there's structure is a big thing in Pryor, Oklahoma school system, I believe.
Yeah. Did you say you were in the time? Are you in the timed event this year?
No, I'm helping. This is
okay. Got it.
My hope is so I've been offered a spot in a time or two, and I just never felt like the timing was right for me personally to go back to bulldogging. I tried to end my career in high school, and I tried to end my roping career bulldogging in high school. So it's always been something I've leaned away from. But then now I'm realizing I'm getting to be 40, and it's like, you know what, it's time. So I'm going to go help Jess Tierney and Russell Cardoza again. It's an event I love doing. I love helping. I don't know if you haven't been to the timed event, you've got to go watch it. And it's amazing. They sell that place out, it
Yeah.
seems like. Every perf. It is one of the coolest events in the world. And to be on that floor and like helping those guys, try to get through that 25 head marathon it's one of the funnest things ever. But I got a few guys riding some horses. Marcus Terrio is going to ride one of my tripping horses, and then Tyler Pearson's going to ride one. I never was going to volunteer my tripping horse Cheeto I rode at Pendleton last year. He's older and he doesn't really need to go. But when Pearson needed to ride, I was like, you know what? Next year when I enter, and I'm going to need a bulldogging horse, and I'm going to need you to bring me an old goodie.
Yeah.
And so that's what letting him ride is an old good one.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the timed event, and I guess I'm going to put this in the form of a question, is all the years that I went, there's another event I used to put on the radio all the time, was the timed event championships. And I always felt like in some ways there was more pressure, especially in the team roping, on the helpers than there is on the ropers. Because somebody's chance to win maybe $100,000 might rely on your head loop or your heel loop. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I certainly always felt that way.
Absolutely it is. And I think one of the first years I went to help Jess Tierney, I told him, I said, if you're wanting me just to go in here and just go try to catch, that's one of the hardest things for me to do. So, I'm going to relax and just kind of go rope. Like we're at the BFI. For me, it's great preparation, getting ready for the Bob Feist. It'll be coming up here in a couple, like a month later. I said, man, I'm going to rope just like I know how. And that way I'm in my comfort zone where I don't get pulled out of it. But you're right. There's a lot of pressure when it comes to the helping side. And I enjoy it because I don't get to heel much anymore. And especially in big stage, big pressure situations. And so that's something I really enjoy getting to do. So I get to go ahead and heel for a week where it actually means a lot. I get to head steers every day for Logan Medlin. That's enough pressure. But to actually get to go heel a little bit, that's a lot of fun. So you're right. There's a lot of pressure on those helpers. And it's a lot of pressure for not a lot of pay. Let's put it that way. Yeah. And so it's more about the pride of helping a guy have a chance to win it all.
The thing I don't think people understand about the timed event is how much it costs for the guys that are entered in that thing. Because you're leasing horses, you're paying helpers, you've got your own travel expenses. A lot of good team ropers probably don't own a tripping horse, a tie-down roping horse, and a bulldogging horse. So they've got there's a lot of money that is invested by those guys.
Well, you look at, I think the fees are like $3,500.
Yeah.
And on top of that, like First does pay $100,000, which seems like a lot. And this was my biggest holdup for the longest time was, yeah, it's great. If you win First, you win $100,000. But by the time you pay your help, you pay your horses and everything else, man, you leave there with maybe $75,000. And I'm like, in here in 3 weeks, we have the BFI where it pays the exact same money and I don't have to get off this horse and bulldog. So that was always my holdup business wise, And,
yeah.
But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of expense. And then some of those guys, they're going to show up, not win anything and still have to pay a guy like Cody Woodward, who's coming all the way down from, Nebraska, bringing good bulldogging horses and his help horse or his hazing horse. And, there's guys that got to travel a long ways just to come, help you out. So you're going to chip in anyways and pay them for using their horse, and you may not win anything. So you're right. There's a lot of expense on it. And like I said, it's really just the fact that only 17 guys have won that thing. I mean, it's just such an elite group of cowboys, and it's ultimately the most cowboy thing you can do. And I think when you're in this rodeo business, that's what we're all striving for, is just to be known as a great hand.
Yeah. The Cinch Timed Event Championships, by the way, are February 27th through March the 1st at the Lazy E Arena in Guthrie, Oklahoma. And it's one of those things that I think everybody who loves Western sports and who loves professional rodeo should go to at least once, because it really is a marquee event. We talk about Trevor Brazil having won over $7 million in his career. That doesn't include several $100,000, maybe $1 million more at the timed event. I mean, Joe Beaver used to call it the Trevor Brazil benefit when Trevor was on his little roll there. I want to ask you about something that you teach. One of the reasons I reached out to you today, Coleman, is this. I've had a couple of people contact me recently, and I'm not sure why, but asked me for advice on soliciting sponsors and getting help with what to do with people who, and I'm a media guy, but I'm not an expert by a long shot. And you've got some great businesses behind you. I know Purina pops right to the top of my head. Talk to me about what you advise, if you ever talk about this when you're teaching, what you would advise people and what you'd advise the high school rodeo kid or whatever that comes to you and says, I'd like to get some sponsor support. This is the best time in a cowboy's life, I think, because of the Cowboy Channel, to reach out to sponsors right now. What do you tell people?
Well, there's so many more platforms now. Obviously you're on TV a lot. You get to do a lot of interviews. And then, on top of that, there's a lot of social media. And I think that's ultimately what drove, the little videos that I make and, my podcast was just kind of trying to pay homage to those guys who've been behind me for a long time. I think the number one thing I get asked all the time is I'll have people ask me, take Purina, for instance. They'll be like, how do we get on with Purina? Okay, well, what's your favorite feed right now? Well, I feed this sweet feed they mix up in my local co-op. I'm like, okay, strike one. That's not what we're going to start with whenever you start talking to a company like that. Go to a company that you're using. I fed Purina for years, believed in their product for a long time before I ever got on with them. And that was a big prerequisite, before you could get on with Purina. You had to feed it for a couple of years, and you need to be able to tell them what your favorite one is. Because ultimately, if you're a guy that jumps around and just chases the dollar, or you're just wanting something for nothing, then your value as an endorsee is not very high. And so the number one thing I tell kids all the time is like, take a product you like. What do you like using? What is the one thing you're like, man, I have got to have this in order to compete? And then go after that company. And you don't go with, hey, here's what I need from you.
Yeah.
Because to be honest, Purina doesn't need Coleman Proctor. They're going to be a successful business. Their four squares of business has been in business for a long time. And that's why you see that checkerboard. So they don't need Coleman Proctor to make their product better. But here's what I think I can do for you guys. Like Purina, here's what I think as an endorsee that I'm going to bring to the table. And here's what I want to be able to do for you. And that's the attitude you got to have. I was very blessed. My dad sold Justin boots ever since I was a little bitty kid. He's been in the Western industry his whole life. And he explained that to me at a young age. Coleman, these companies don't need you. You need to explain to them what you can do for them. Right. And I think as long as you have that attitude of gratitude and you come to them, there's a great opportunity, because a lot of these companies, they want to get out there, and the more you can do on social media and be talking about their products and what they're doing and make your videos engaging. I think kids have the greatest tool at their disposal with social media. They're going to be on it all the time. And, but just understanding that follows you forever. I'm so glad that we didn't have that when I was in high school or college. You know what I mean? Like that would have probably been the end of my career there. But I joke about that all the time, but it's that's a serious issue. Like anything that you've had on there, it's going to follow you around maybe for the rest of your career. So, I think the number one thing is always, if you want to make some content on social media, find a company that you believe in, because then you're going to make genuine stuff. You're going to make genuine posts for them. Right. And then that'll show your value to them. And then, be willing to accept. In the beginning, I think it's so funny because you want to have a standard of, this is what I get for this. Well, on the other hand, you don't want to turn down $100. So always be willing to work with companies and say, here's, kind of where I would like to stay to keep consistency throughout my sponsorship programs. But, I sure believe in your product, and I think we can do some cool things together. So I'm willing to work with you on however we make that possible. Smarty is a new sponsor of mine this year. And one of the big things I told him, I said, I want to air the Time event next year. So I need the bulldogging and the horse, like the little bulldogger kit, right? The one Will Loomis has talked so highly about.
Yeah.
Because I learn at a very small level. Like, I think what makes my lessons so successful in teaching team roping is that I understand how simple it's got to be for me to learn. So like the other day when Pearson came up and he starts giving me the checklist of all this we got to do, I'm like, hold on, let's start with my hands. What do my hands need to be doing, right? Like that's right. The level of which I learn at. That's why I've started my timed event prep for next year. Hopefully I've started it this year. Already started trying to work on this bulldogging. But just like that opportunity with Smarty to get it to get in business with them is just like, here's where I'm at, and here's what I think I can help you do. Because if you can make me a successful bulldogger, you pretty much have a world-class product, and I'm going to be able to show that.
Yeah, good point. To one point that you made in the answer to that question, thank God there was not Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram in 1976 when I was in high school, or in 1980 when I was in college. Oh, my Lord.
Or what if it chronicled it? You might have had the greatest videos for sale right now ever. You know what I mean? Like, I think Jake Long and I had a great time when we were in college, and like we were always great kids, but and I would think we were pretty on the edge. And then I would hear some of the stories about my dad and his buddies that he ran around with, you know, and you're like, I mean, we didn't have the forward thinking of going out and changing all the clocks in all the house and your buddy's truck. And so his alarm went off and he shows up at work 4 hours early, right? Like I didn't have that kind of forethought. You know what I mean? The kind of the pranks that my dad pulled. Like it's impressive.
Yeah, good point. We had a rival. My high school's nickname was the Raiders, and we had a big R in white rocks up on a hillside above the school, Lost River High School. And 20 miles away, our arch rivals were Bonanza High School, and they had a big B on their hillside. How many social media videos could we have made from each of us sneaking up on the other school's hillside before a football game and changing the B to an R or an R to a B and thinking that was really cool? Stupid stuff. Why did we do that?
I tell you what, the people ask me all the time, because we all have a past, and I talk about regrets. Like, I don't regret any of it, man. When you got kids, they come along and somebody said, I bet you hope they don't do all the same stuff you did. And I said, yeah, I hope they do. I hope they have fun. I hope they enjoy life like I have. And most importantly, I hope they have a good group of friends around them to save their tail like I did my whole life. I've had great mentors. I've had the greatest mentors to look up to. I've had the greatest role models, and I've had the greatest friends around me my whole life. So, that's ultimately what's kept me like on the track of being successful. So I hope they discover the same thing.
2 final questions following up on that. Question number 1. The thing that I always like to teach, when I got into the rodeo announcing business, I was blessed because I'm doing a bunch of high school rodeos in Oregon. I didn't know what I was doing. But you know who lived in Oregon and who had a daughter going through high school rodeo at that time? A fellow named Bob Tallman.
Oh.
So I fell into the circle of the man who I consider to be the GOAT, the greatest of all time. And the thing that people hear so much, but you can reinforce it just from the people you've been talking about and the people you've grown up with, you want to be the best, hang with the best, get to know the best. Just the fact that I got to know Bob, he walked up to me one day and he said, "You're pretty good. Stop trying to sound like me." And it was the single greatest piece of advice I ever got. Being around the best is the best way to be the best.
Absolutely. And I think lean into your strengths. You got to work on your weaknesses. We talk about that all the time. I always want my weaknesses to become a strength, but you got to lean into what you're good at, right? Like make your strengths even stronger. And, I think I had a buddy of mine tell me the other day, we were just kind of joking around. He said, "Yeah, Coleman," he said, "I'm a pretty good smart aleck. You're a great storyteller," he said, "but I'm a smart aleck." And I'm like, that's exactly right. Like if I were to try to get into announcing, it would be hard for me to come with that off the cuff stuff. I'm more Clem McSpadden, have great story that I can fill you in, you know what I mean? And make you feel like you're right here in the living room, but lean into your strengths. And then I think one of the, you asked me earlier about all the, at the finals, all the media stuff we do. One of the greatest blessings that I've had come into my corner is the opportunity to do the Purina pregame show, because every day for 10 nights, no matter what situation's going on, for one, I've got to click out of whatever my mentality is that day, right? Like whatever, if it's gone good or bad the night before, that doesn't matter right now. I've got to be Coleman Proctor, the host, co-hosting with Luke Branquino. And I get to sit on that stage and we get to talk. Back.
There you are.
So,
you're a very popular fellow, Coleman.
Well, that happens when you're close to the ranch at 9:30 on a Wednesday. They're going to be trying to get me rolling and doing
anyway,
something.
You were talking about you and Luke on the Purina pregame show.
But every day I get to pick his brain. Like, what would be your mentality? I think this year, with having a gold buckle coming into play the whole time, I was just talking about pressure. And he was the first person to be like, "Hey, man, you're the only one that runs that switch." Simple advice. But getting to come from Luke Branquino, it just did powers for me. I mean, it just fired me up about, you're right, Luke. And so that's been a huge opportunity. And I know people were kind of worried in my corner about that becoming a distraction, trying to do that show and rope. But man, it's actually been one of the greatest things I can do is be able to hang out with Luke and get, just that mentality and just, how did you become a 5-time world champ doing this? You know what I'm saying? So it's been a huge blessing. And I think that is something I tell kids all the time. You never know where that's coming from. So just because it's not something that you had on your radar, something I try to do now is I try to do things that get me outside my comfort zone. Right. Like when I asked to do, to talk at the church service during the finals. do stuff that's outside your comfort zone. Get out there a little bit. You never know when you have the opportunity to grow, and you never know when you have that next big opportunity that changes your life.
Coleman, I have one final question for you, and it's a real simple one. You've got a chance this year to go to your 10th National Finals Rodeo. I'm really hoping you qualify for your first National Final steer roping. How big a deal would that be to get to both this year?
Man, that's a big, that is something I have dreamed of. I had the opportunity to hang out with T. Woman this last weekend. He went to 33. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
He went 77 steers in a row at the National Final steer roping of tying them down. Of catching 77 in a row. One of those two stats. Like, it's an incredible stat. But yeah, being a cowboy from Northeast Oklahoma, I mean, that is absolutely something that's been a dream of mine to be able to, ever since I roped with Brett Boatwright and I walked in there to his house and he had just had his back numbers stacked on his desk. I'll never forget it. They were just over there on a stack. Everybody, we put them on the walls, we do all this stuff. It was just in a stack. This one says NFSR. This one says NFR. I mean, they were just everywhere. And ever since that day, I thought, man, that'd be the coolest thing, is to be able to make both of them in the same year. I want to experience that. That's been a goal of mine. I've got some great horses. I work very hard at it. It's something I take very serious. I've been very blessed. The steer ropers are the greatest culture of guys as far as trying to help you out, make you better. They want to see their sport grow. And you see it. I think the steer opens really came on a lot like the other events when they added it to the college rodeo division. Now you've got these young kids that you guys haven't heard of yet. Riley O'Rourke. I mean, he is going to be a contender for a world title here within the first year or two of getting his card. I mean, he is maybe one of the fastest guys I've ever seen in my life. And, you got that kind of competition coming on. It's not like, the sport's really evolved and grown, and it's gotten a lot tougher. And you see that like last year, I at 40,000 had never not made the finals. And I thought if I could get to 42, I'd make it. And I got to 42 and I missed it by 5,000. Yeah. So, which is great for the sport, I think. I mean, that means things are growing and they're going the right direction. But it's absolutely on my radar. It's a huge goal of mine to get to the National Final Steer Open along with the NFR and have a chance to win a gold buckle in both, and then be trying to fight on Stetson a little bit and just be a thorn in his side to see if we can't slip in there and strap on one of those all-around titles.
Yeah. Coleman Proctor joining us. Coleman, it's always such a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it. And I don't know that we talked about team roping much at all, but we talked about life, and that's been a whole lot of fun all by itself. Thank you for your time, my friend. Before you go, tell me where folks can find your podcast.
Man, anywhere you download your podcast. It's just the Toter Tales, and check my videos out on Facebook and anywhere you get your social media. But the podcast itself is on anywhere you get your podcast.
One of the greatest guys in pro rodeo, one of the best spokespeople we have for pro rodeo. Coleman Proctor, thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you to Coleman Proctor for his time and his insights. Like I say, we didn't talk a lot about team roping. We talked a lot about life, and I think that's probably about as much fun as you're going to have. Appreciate you joining us. Please like and subscribe to our 8 Seconds Media social media sites, our Facebook page, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of that. You can check out the video of this interview on our YouTube channel. Thank you to our sponsors, Rodeo Life Magazine, to M2 Ranch Jerky, Team Equinity, it's all about the horse, equinity.com. Justin Boot Company, the Standard of the West since 1879, to the Grandview at Las Vegas, to Wrangler and Resist All, to the Gooding Pro Rodeo. They're celebrating their 100th year this year, to Next Gen Rodeo, and to the Cowboy Channel. And we appreciate our featured interview sponsors, Classic Equine and Classic Rope. We'll do it again in the next few days. You never know when we're going to put another show up. Thanks for joining us. This is the Steve Kenyon Podcast.